Well, we started Toledo Parent on my kitchen table, and then we had the papers delivered to my garage. It was a lot. We put together a little business plan and $35 for a answering machine and flyers, at Kinko's, and we took it to a baby fair with our idea, and Jacobson's and Toledo Hospital signed up. We like to turn people on to little secrets, like you may not have known that this is happening, and make these small businesses successful. And locally owned businesses are the fabric of this community. They're the
Right.
personality of this community. I didn't
Journey.
know how hard it was going to be to raise a family and run a business. So that was really the hardest part, was balancing.
I'm Andy Golding, partner and chief strategy officer for Kripke Enterprises, and I am excited today about our 10th episode of Toledo Works. In my podcast, I speak with business owners from Toledo, Ohio, to uncover their stories of success, struggles, and achievements. This podcast is sponsored by Kripke Enterprises. At Kripke, recycling metal is not just good for the environment, it's good for business. This podcast is produced by Stewart Media Strategies. And today, I am truly thrilled to introduce Collete Jacobs, publisher and editor-in-chief of Toledo and local area iconic magazines, including Toledo Parent, Toledo City Paper, M Living, Ann Arbor Family, Findlay Area Living Magazine, and Ann Arbor Current. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And, I love city paper. I read it. I feel like it's everywhere. When you were a child, did you say, I want to be a magazine publisher?
I actually used to cut out catalogs and make my own magazines.
You did?
Yeah, I was probably 8.
No kidding.
Yeah, then it kind of went away. Like I didn't.
And what did you
for a long time?
Did you go to school to study magazines, or what? How did you get into this business?
Well, I went to college, and my dad said you should be a secretary. So you should take business classes. So I started taking requirements and typing and shorthand, and then I took one little art class, and then I took another art class, and before you knew it, I was signed up in a Bachelor of Fine Arts with an emphasis in graphic design.
Wow.
And my father shook his head. You're never going to make any money.
He said, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
All right, so tell me the story from there.
Well, I moved to Toledo.
Where are you originally from?
Middletown, Ohio.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. So I had my first child. I went to the Mother Center, which is a group for new moms, and I met another woman who had moved to Toledo, Becky Harris, from Washington, D.C., and her husband was a law professor at the University of Toledo. And she saw what I was doing as a freelance graphic designer. So I had worked at agencies, but then when I had a baby, I just freelanced. And I worked out of my house.
The original work from Homer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And she thought, well, maybe she could do something part-time. So she started calling me with these ideas. And so she called with the first idea was, what if I went in and I child-proofed people's homes, put on the cabinet locks and the toilet locks? And I said, well, maybe in Washington, D.C., but here in Toledo, we just go to the Andersons. She's like, yeah, you're right. So then she called and said, what if I went in and I took care of people's homes when they went on sabbatical from the university? Water their plants, walk their dogs, get their mail. And I was like, how many people realistically go on sabbatical from UT? Yeah, you're right, not that many. So then she called and said, what about a parent paper? And she was from Chicago area, and she knew about Chicago Parent. My husband and I would go to Chicago. I would pick up Chicago Parent. I would read every article. I would read every ad. I was so hungry for information on what to do with this baby. And I used to design Owens Corning Fiberglass's World newsletter, so I knew how to get the writers, photographers, and design it. So that's, and her background was marketing. So then I said, that is a good idea. So we put together a little business plan and $35 for a answering machine and flyers, at Kinko's, and we took it to a baby fair with our idea, and Jacobson's and Toledo Hospital signed up right away. And
it's fantastic.
And that was the extent of our business plan.
And is she still your partner?
No, her husband went to University of Pennsylvania, so he they moved. So once they moved, I was kind of on my own with 3 little kids by then.
Okay.
And then my husband, who has an MBA and a law degree, I'm like, hey, mister, can you help me? Because I
Sure.
can't do this all on my own. So he came in and was doing the financial parts of it, so I didn't have to.
So I know a lot of
handle all
people,
of it.
a lot, I didn't mean to.
No, that's
I know
okay.
a lot of people get into businesses like that with friends. And it sounds like this business grew, and then maybe the unwinding of the partnership, either because you don't like each other or somebody moves. Did you have any of that issue at all?
No, well, we started Toledo Parent on my kitchen table, and then we had the papers delivered to my garage. It was a lot. Then we moved upstairs, but then I had a second child, so that became the nursery. So then we moved to the basement.
Right.
And then we moved over to Common Space off of Reynolds Road, the old I think it's a Martin School, and we rented a classroom.
Okay.
It's like kind of an artist's community, so the rent was really cheap. So we
Is that
rented
where
a
the
classroom.
atomic?
Yeah, Mr. Atomic's there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we rented a classroom there, and then we outgrew that and had to rent one upstairs. So we had 2 different areas, but you couldn't run the air conditioner and the computers at the same time. So we were like, oh, copies can wait. Let's leave the air conditioning on. But during that time, one of my advertisers said, I just love Toledo Parent News. It's the cultural pulse of Toledo. And I had to laugh out loud. I'm like, the Parent
amazing.
paper is the cultural pulse of Toledo? And we would travel, and I would pick up alt weeklies because we wanted to know about art and music
Sure.
and food. So that's when we decided to do city paper.
Okay.
And about that time, we were looking for a space where we could all be together, and we found the space downtown. And I think Becky's husband moved maybe about a year after that.
Okay.
And I didn't know that they were going to move, so I was going to have her buy me out because I had 3 little kids.
So you were ready to.
I was in over my head.
Okay.
But then she said they're moving, so my husband's like, we need to buy her out. And I was like, no, I'm tired. But we worked it out, and so I took it over.
So how long in this did you start making money? Like, I don't want to say real money because I don't know what real money is, but the kind of money where you and your husband say to yourselves, we're making money here. This is awesome.
It was a while. Like I said, our business plan was non-existent. It was
Right.
really silly. Like, we should have. But we didn't know what it was going to turn into. Like,
Right.
it was, I think people thought it's these 2 moms, and they have this little idea. And we had no idea how it would grow. So we started 6 times a year, and then we went to 12 times a year with Parent News. And then with City Paper, it was a monthly. And then we took it to a weekly. But so we didn't really know. So it took us probably a good 15 years before we figured out like how, we were making some money, but we had no plan of how
Right.
we should have our salaries built in, and that would help us adjust our pricing and
Sure.
that kind of thing.
So when you look back at Toledo Parent, are there any articles in there that you say, boy, that was some bad, it has been proven that was bad advice?
No, I don't think so.
No?
I think
Times
we've
haven't changed
been-
that much?
Yeah.
You never told women they could smoke while they were pregnant or anything?
No,
Okay.
No. It's still 91% female reading it, and
Right.
we still haven't got that many dads reading it. So
Sure.
that hasn't changed, but yeah.
So now you move into what I read is the Toledo City Paper, which I love. And someone
Thanks.
just was in here saying that what's the section when the changes, the gossip section of it?
Marketplace changes, the openings and closings.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
That's
obviously
popular.
that's my favorite.
Yeah.
So I used to know a magazine in Cleveland called Scene Magazine, and I'm sure you guys
Mm-hmm.
it's part of a network. How did you make the change, and what gave you the confidence, and how did you keep the integrity of Toledo Parent, where now there are some ads in Toledo City Paper that really aren't for parents,
Right,
or maybe for
right.
parents, but yeah.
We had to be careful not to cannibalize the Toledo Parent audience, but that was easy because the City Paper's more adult, grown-up kinds of interests, so
Right.
that wasn't really hard. We we got in, like Planned Parenthood bought some ads with us in Toledo Parent, and that caused some controversy that we didn't expect. Some of the Christian schools kicked us out of distribution, but we were really careful to be, mindful of the two separate audiences.
And so how do you, because what do you consider these papers? Does the information inside of them considered advertorial? Do you have any controls of what's written, or do you how do you balance that whereas maybe a daily paper has rules that they do their best to live by?
We're more flexible with advertorials. So if we run an advertorial, it's marked advertorial, so readers know. They don't always catch that though, but it's always clearly marked. So we do a lot of special ad sections, like City Sips, where we interview the bartenders. Well, those are ad packages that the bar buys and then a restaurant buys, and then they get this free bonus edit. So we'll interview their bartender and do some Q&As with them, but those are always marked advertorial or sponsored content. And we assign the stories. We use freelance writers. So I have an editor for each paper, and most of that is assigned stories, and we talk about budgets and what stories we're going to handle every month.
And do you, for City Paper, are you looking for hard news? Is that
a little bit of both? It's harder to find writers that can write hard news because it takes a little bit more work than features. So that's been kind of difficult, but we have a few that will dig in. Is the difference between hard news and features, and I only know this from some of the TV shows I've watched, but is the difference between hard news and features like because I think I've seen you dive into some subjects. Do you fact check those, and how does that process work? What is it? I know what I see on TV. What is it like in the real world? Well, you have to make sure that the writers are talking to people and getting quotes and aren't editorializing the stories. So we're really careful about that. And, my husband is an attorney, so he makes extra sure that.
Have you ever had any issues with any of that?
No, not really.
And what stories would you say in City Paper or in any of the papers are you the most proud of?
I don't know. I feel like we cover the gamut of, arts, entertainment, music, and food, but then we throw in some hard news. I think all the papers actually, they really highlight the best of Toledo. We like to turn people on to little secrets, like you may not have known that this is happening, and make these small businesses successful. And locally owned businesses are the fabric of this community. They're the personality of this community. So I can't say there's one story I'm especially proud of, but we do a political issue every year, which I think is really helpful for readers because we really dive into who these people are and we ask them serious questions and not so serious questions, so you can get a feel for who they are.
Their personality.
Yeah.
Sure. And so you are in 3 different communities. Are the 3 different communities like wildly different?
Do you mean
Ann Arbor, Findlay, and Toledo? Yeah.
Not too different. I mean, Findlay's obviously a lot smaller than Toledo area. Ann Arbor's a lot more liberal, so we do a lot more with cannabis up there. University of Michigan's always doing things up there. So, so they are different, but they're the same. I think all the readers are looking for the same kinds of information.
Right.
Yeah.
And then how do you go about finding a reporter or a writer, and how do you know if their work is good? How do you do that?
You ask for samples.
Okay.
We use a lot of interns for the smaller pieces. It's hard to find people that are really trained writers, but there are a lot of good writers. We have a lot of really good writers.
Wow.
Yeah.
So as you've been growing the businesses, you do one, you get it tight, you do the next, and probably the acquisition or adding more papers is probably easier when you have a base of a couple of them.
Right. So when we started City Paper, I had the graphic designers, I had the drivers, I had the writers, so we just had to pivot a little bit on what we were going to write about. So that is definitely easier. And a lot of my writers will write for Toledo and Ann Arbor, or
Got
for
it.
Findlay and Toledo. So that makes it easier.
And so in your growth, what's been a stumbling block for you? What has been a real challenge, or what is something that you didn't anticipate on your entrepreneurial
I didn't
journey?
know how hard it was going to be to raise a family and run a business. So that was really the hardest part, was balancing
What
having
about it?
small children, and just, you're paying attention to your career, and it's not a 9 to 5 job, so I don't clock in at 9 and leave at 5. It's something that goes on after hours. When the kids go to bed, I review invoices, and so it was constantly kind of trying to juggle, but it worked out. My kids are great, and
Right.
yeah.
And they probably loved having their mom.
They're very independent, and
right.
they're always the last ones to be picked up at the volleyball game.
And I would think that the papers gave you access for your kids to do things that maybe other kids couldn't do, or they could do for free.
Yeah, we got tickets to some things. But yeah, that's true. Yeah, they liked sometimes getting music tickets, concert tickets, but there were some perks. Yeah.
So how do you now that you are a successful publisher and your children are grown, I'm sure that you have hired younger women and men that are going through the same struggles that you potentially went through. How do you guide them, and what advice do you give them?
I think we have a lot of young people that come through. A lot of young people start their careers with us. And I think they learn how to work hard. We're not a huge business, so everybody has to really pull their weight. So there's a lot of expectations for them. So I think they learn a really good work ethic. I've had some people come back to me years later and say, I wanted to thank you because I wasn't in the mindset of how to work.
Right.
And you gave me a lot of responsibility, and a few left early, but they did come back later and thank me for setting a nice,
Sure.
Yeah.
Like a good
basis,
coach, teacher.
Yeah, foundation for them to know what hard work is.
So is that, not that I don't know if you have a business plan now, I'm going to maybe assume that you don't. But a lot of businesses, in our business, when we hire someone, in our minds, we're like hiring them for life. Mm-hmm. And, we've been really fortunate that we've had people stay, and
Right.
Our business isn't necessarily, I don't know if people are looking at this as a stepping stone to the next thing. Whereas if I'm a writer, I want to write for the New York Times or, so is that, how do you balance that when you're going to put a lot of time and effort into people,
Right.
but then when they get really good, they're going to want to go and they leave the nest. Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
We've had some for a very long time. A lot of our freelance writers have day jobs because it's not so easy to get a full-time writing gig,
Okay.
especially here.
Right.
So a lot of my writers are a little bit older with day jobs and they enjoy writing. A lot of the younger people, they get really good experience and chops and they move on, and
Okay.
that's just how it is. But I enjoy working with younger people and
Sure.
teaching them how a magazine is put together, and a lot of them get really excited about it.
So now, the as I've been thinking about, this podcast or this interview, I have been thinking that, people don't read newspapers anymore, and people don't read published word. I mean, I have it all in my pocket. Mm-hmm. And how, that this is not news to you, is it?
No.
Oh,
no.
okay. So how do you create something that that people pick up?
Well,
how is that working?
The content is compelling. We have a less than 2% return rate, so we are monitored. Like, I know how many papers I drop off. I know how many I pick up. This market, they're still reading print, but I serve them how they want to get their information. So we're also digital.
Right.
So we're updating that daily. So our website is updated daily. So you'll find things online that you're not going to find in print. So that's been a real area of growth, especially during COVID. Like, we had to pivot really quickly, and online we were sending stories online, but we weren't doing it as frequently as we should have been. And now we're feeding it daily.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so people have it on their phone, and is the amount of papers, and I'm not trying to steal any secrets, do you make as many papers as you did 10 years ago, 5 years ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You make the same amount, even though I don't know, I haven't even seen a child of mine hold a newspaper.
Yes, we're still publishing, and I still monitor it, and we still have readers that
Sure.
prefer print.
Well, I read it. It's just the, as you see, the Blade is, I'm not even sure how many days they publish.
2 days a week.
They actually print 2 days a week.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so who are your competitors?
Probably, the Blade, but we're different animals, so we're competing for advertising dollars,
Sure,
I suppose. Healthy Living News, Sylvania Advantage, maybe the Mommy
So you don't
papers.
consider the internet, podcasts, TV shows, YouTube as your competition?
Not really. We're just different. We started doing podcasts, but yeah, we're just kind of a different animal. I don't know. And we're solely supported by advertising.
Right.
So it's incredible. If you read the paper and you see those advertisers, you can thank them because
Sure.
they're bringing it to you. It's pretty amazing. We've got loyal advertisers.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What is of these publications that you publish, do you have a favorite issue in each one of them?
Well, Best of Toledo is always the biggest
Okay.
issue. And the city paper is always the sexiest paper, my salespeople love selling city paper.
Right.
Mature Living is a different audience. So probably Best of Toledo is our most successful story.
How'd you come up with it?
Other papers did it across the country, so we started it, and it grew. It was tiny. We had, I think, a little bar we had the party in, and then
Right.
we grew and grew, and now we're over at, this year we did a Toledo Club. 1,100 people come, and
Wow.
it's
That's incredible.
crazy. Yeah. So we have about 45,000 people that vote every year for that, so it's pretty amazing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what about do the other papers have a special edition that you love?
We do family favorites for Toledo Parent, so that's
Okay.
all about things that moms, the
Right.
best bagel place, kids eat free, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So that's popular too. Mature Living, we've had it about 6 years now, so we really revamped it totally, and that's coming along. And we have two audiences for that. We have people my age who will be dealing with our senior parents, and then senior citizens who are looking for information.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
that's
ready to
been-
read that paper yet. I'm not. No, thank you.
Yeah, the average age is coming down for it too. It's like 50.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
I'm in my 30s, so I have some time.
Right.
I have some
You and me
time.
both.
That is very cool. What other things are you guys thinking about doing in the future?
I think we're probably going to focus more on digital, and that audience is growing. We reach about 179,000 people a month between our print and digital with city paper, so it's a healthy audience, but I know we can do more with digital.
Right.
So yeah, probably just focusing more on digital.
So now going back a little bit. So now your partner leaves. She moves to Pennsylvania, and your husband comes in. And a lot of the entrepreneurs love or hate working with their spouse. What has your ride been like?
He's my best friend, so I would say we work really well together. He's not at the office every day 9 to 5, so we bounce ideas off of each other, and sometimes it gets, he has a certain idea and I have a certain idea, but his input's, it's well received, but sometimes I have to ixnay it. So
Right.
but it's been fun. It's been really good, and I know having a partner is really hard in business, especially.
Sure.
But he's been a believer since we started the paper, so he's awesome. Yeah.
So do you think that if he worked with you side by side, it might be a little less fun?
It might be. It's probably better. I mean, we live together, we work together. I think it would be more difficult, but the way we have it, it's awesome. It works really well.
And what would you say has been the main, what would be the most, for people that are listening that are maybe thinking about going into business with their spouse, what advice would you give them?
I would say have clearly defined roles and respect for each other's opinions or thoughts on how the business should go, and compromise. You have to pick your battles sometimes. So I think having a clearly defined role for each person is really helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
So for your advertisers,
Mm-hmm.
have you had any advertisers that have said that have just jumped into Toledo and they took a full page ad out with you, and they, went on the radio and went on TV, and you said to yourself, there is just no way that this business is not going to survive in this town?
Well, I think most small businesses don't have a huge budget to throw a bunch of money at advertising, and usually they start out small. I know how hard it is, to start a business.
Yeah, but I'm sure not everyone's a small business. ProMedica is not a small business. There are other advertisers that you have that are bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ProMedica doesn't do. They used to do a lot with us, but
Right.
They're having some issues, I think, right now. No, I mean, we've seen so many come and go out of business.
What business do you think is the most goes in and out of Toledo the most? What do you think you've seen the most?
Restaurants, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, restaurants. I think that's a kind of a risky undertaking.
How do you handle going to the new pizza shop and they say they want a quarter-page ad, and do you make them pay in advance, or how does it work?
Kind of depends.
Yeah.
If we know nothing about them, we usually ask for the first ad up front. But most of these businesses over these years, we understand, if they get in too far with their advertising and they owe us too much, I mean, we'll work out a payment plan and stop the ads so they can get back on their feet. And hopefully the ads help them, get their word out. But yeah, we try to work with a lot of these small businesses.
What small business do you think is your biggest success story?
Oh my gosh. We've got a lot of advertisers that have been with us for a long time. It's funny because some people, like So and Such, she's an alterations woman on Sylvania Avenue, old Sylvania Avenue. She's been with us for probably 15 years, a quarter page. For a business her size, it's amazing. But then I get bigger businesses that are like, a quarter page, that's too much, I'm not spending that. And it's like Boyd's Candy. She's a tiny little business, but they're successful because they're in there and their name is there. So it's kind of interesting how some of these businesses think about advertising.
Yeah, it's brutal. Advertising is it's absolutely brutal. And as someone who buys advertising, as long as you guarantee me results, I'll do whatever you want, or put a coupon in there, or all of those things. Do you encourage people to coupon in your paper?
It has to be a really good coupon because my readers don't
tear stuff up.
I mean, like me, I'll tear a coupon out and I'll carry it around, and then I'll forget to pull it out when it's time. But I know I wanted to go to that store, so
right.
So that's hard. It has to be a really good coupon. So.
And do you have any of your kids in the business?
My daughter Margot my kids live all over. So one is in New York City, one is in Chicago, one's in Seattle.
Okay.
And I was hoping maybe one of them would take over my business, but it doesn't look likely. But my daughter, during COVID, she was out of her job because she did events, and I needed a social media person.
Okay. And
she called me one day and said, "Mom, why did you guys post that on Instagram? That's not how Instagram is used." And I'm like, what? I said, well, it was an ad. And she goes, you can't do that. You have to be organic on Instagram with ads. It can't be a price and item. I'm like, oh, right. Okay. So I asked her if she could help, and so she's handling all of our social media, and she does a really good job. And it's our social media is amazing, Facebook and Instagram, and we just started TikTok, so it's fun. Yeah,
TikTok is fun.
Yeah,
they all are fun. What do you think about AI and writing?
That's really interesting. I'm just learning about it, but I think it's probably going to be something we're going to be using, especially for these small little briefs that we write. You
Sure.
know, you don't need
Or
a
have you
lot.
used any of it at
No,
all?
I haven't, not yet.
It's unbelievable. It's the greatest
That's
thing
what
that
I
ever hit the
hear.
planet.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I hear. So, yeah, we're working on that.
Yeah, it is. I think that your writers are probably, even the freelance writers, are probably very nervous and with AI, because it is, once you dive into it, the power of AI is absolutely unbelievable.
And I imagine for these smaller pieces that don't take a lot of research, it's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about taking from 15 minutes of your time to 25 seconds.
Right.
The whole thing. I mean, it's. I think AI is. I'm a huge fan of AI. I don't think it's going anywhere, and my opinion is it's going to be no different than a Word or Excel or a calculator.
Yeah.
Everything we touch, everything that you write, is going to go through AI.
Right.
And it's just going to make you better at everything.
Yeah. So that's the next challenge. It's amazing how much I've had to learn about technology. You know, I graduated in 1982 from college, and we used, pens to draw straight lines. I mean, it was like no computers at all. So I've been learning more and more about it, and it's exciting, really.
And what about your relationships with your vendors, like the people that make it? And have you been using the same vendor that's printed it? And
we have for probably 10 years.
And
it's printed out of Detroit. Outside of Detroit, yeah.
So they bring it down, and I would think that would be very competitive as well. How do you choose that, and what do you look for when you're picking a vendor?
Well, we have to look at deadlines. You know, when we can send it to the printer and how soon can they turn it around. And our printers turn it around in a day. So we send it at Tuesday night, and it's delivered on Wednesday morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, that's awesome. Well, I am so glad to learn more about the paper. I'm, as I said before, I'm a huge fan of it. I think it is, we have had in our 10 episodes, we have had a lot of iconic people in Toledo, and you are another one. So
thank you.
It's awesome to have you, and I appreciate it. And I wish you the best in all of your endeavors in the next magazine that you buy.
Thank you.
So thanks for being here.
Thanks.